testing is a tool that science uses, but you also need to interpret the results correctly. And this is where easy you can go, even in science, from good science to bad science, very quickly. Because there's this thing, also the correlation and causation. You can find things that correlate very well, and especially with using AI or similar methodologies for models, you can correlate anything.
Yeah.
You can find
Confirmation
always some correlation.
biases,
But
right?
is this true? Yes. But is it true that this is happening? Sometimes you need to go really on the fundamental level and not immediately find an answer. You have to think about it. You have an explanation, and you shouldn't just accept it as true. You have to test it. And this is where it's really the good science part, is just going deeper and deeper into testing to try to figure out what is going on. What am I seeing? Not just do one test and then call it a day and say, okay, good, we figured it out. Now now the coffee is better quality.
Initiating direct trade and making it work at a small or medium-sized scale is hard, especially ahead of harvest. Arkena Coffee Marketplace connects roasters directly with smallholder farmers in Ethiopia and builds in the hard parts: integrated QC, logistics support, and producer-led transparency. Ethiopia's harvest is underway and samples will be ready in February. We know we're early, but that's the point. With coffee supply as volatile as it has been in 2025, getting in now helps you understand timelines and can assist in planning your 2026 buying with confidence, even if you've never bought direct before. The minimum is around 20 bags, and Arkena can pull multiple roasters to meet the MOQ, so you can participate without overcommitting. If you're curious, listen to our recent conversation on the podcast with founder Matthew Thornton, then explore the marketplace via the link in our show notes. You can also book a meeting with Matthew and he'll walk you through requesting samples, the order process, pulled orders, QC, and shipping once coffees are ready. Supporting our advertisers is a great way to support our mission at Map It Forward to build responsible businesses with responsible pricing models. Check the show notes for details and explore Arkena Coffee Marketplace today. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 1 of a brand new series on the podcast, one that has been a long time coming, and I'm thrilled to be having this conversation. Samo Smrke from the Zurich University of Applied Sciences. Welcome to the podcast for the first time.
Thank you, Lee. It's a pleasure to be here. Like you said, it's been a long time coming. We discussed this a few years ago, but
over a plate of chips.
I took way too much time, to be honest, to get back to you. Thought about it many times, and sometimes we just have to do it, right?
We do. And I really appreciate you reaching out and saying, Lee, I think it's time. We are talking about what is real innovation in coffee. And this is something that you and I have talked about before. We talked about a lot of things that don't make sense in our industry. Anyway, well, that's essentially what this whole conversation is going to be about. Things that where 1 + 1 doesn't quite equal 2. Somewhat, tell everyone to start off with who you are, what you do, where you do it, and then we're going to talk about why we're having this conversation.
Sure. So we start with, I'm Samo Smrke. Right now I am the acting head of the Coffee Excellence Center at Zurich University of Applied Sciences. We are a university team, a group at university, who is focused on doing research and science of coffee. So our main aim or our main purpose is to support coffee industry with innovation. So using research to support innovation. And then the second kind of mission that we have is to share the knowledge that we learned by working with coffee companies to basically to everybody who wants to learn with us at our course, right? So we have a course where we use this knowledge that we learned based on working with coffee companies to apply it then in the education. But it's one part of what we do, but actually main part of what we do, we are a scientific research team at the university. We are chemists as our background. So I'm also an analytical chemist. I did my PhD in analytical chemistry, studying antioxidants, phenolic compounds, so secondary plant metabolites in coffee. That was from around 2008, 2011. I started to do studies on coffee, and this transition from really going from the analytical chemistry, analyzing compounds with equipment that is used with chromatography, was always felt to me like this is great. It's high-end science. I worked a bit in the pharmaceutical industry for not even a year, and I felt like, yeah, it's a high-tech equipment, but I always felt there's something missing. There's some personal connection missing when you just work at some industry where you work with something that you will never find a result. So I was just recently at it was a YouTube short from a podcast where the person said most people working in pharmaceutical industry will never find their product on the shelves because there's so much research needed that there's most people who work will never do something that is in the shelf in the end, that does something, right? And this is kind of, I saw this, it was a bit shocking. It explained me why I didn't feel there so much at home, because you don't see the result. And with coffee, I really got this attachment to coffee because anything we do with coffee, we can test it right away because we can taste the coffee, we can drink it, and then it's this really connection between science to the consumer to the product is really direct.
It's interesting you say that. The reason I got out of science was for the reason that I felt that there was so much bureaucracy. And I was in a lab. It was very early on in my career. And I was working in a lab and was watching the frustration of other people in the lab that just felt like it was a production line rather than actual innovation that was ever going to see the light of day. So there was a lot of testing, there was a lot of retesting, there was a lot of ideas that were flowing around. And then people would get deflated that when they would look at what was required to actually see things go to market, it was immediately deflating them. And I'm like, I can't be in this environment. And when you'd go and ask other people, they'd be like, yeah, that's science. That's exactly, I'm like, I can't do this. I've got to go figure out another path for me because this is going to kill me. And yeah, so I really relate to what you're saying. And I'm glad that you found coffee as a way to actually express your curiosity and fulfill your scientific kind of life as well.
Exactly. I'm super happy about this job. It's my dream job that I never knew it existed, and that I that I will get this job is kind of just happened by a stream of coincidence. Like, honestly, everything in life, it's about a lot of coincidence, right? A lot of things that you cannot predict or you cannot plan. And for me, my journey into coffee was really not planned. Often people ask me, especially young students, like, how did I get into coffee? Do I have any suggestions about a career path to become a scientist, to do research in coffee? And honestly, I really cannot help to answer this question because my journey was completely coincidental, and I did not know coffee before I started to study it. I mean, I had drank coffee sometimes. I was not a regular coffee drinker, and I did not know how a coffee fruit looks like, how coffee tree looks like, to be honest, because I was just not into this. And specialty coffee was not so big. It just started, at least in this part of Europe. Yeah, then I discovered it, and it completely changed how I see science, how I see coffee.
And then a few years ago, you and I happened to be waiting to get some food in a line at Mice. And then we happened to meet. We didn't know each other at all. We sat down and I said to you, because I was very confused at the time about a whole bunch of things. And then I said to you, what do you think of all of this? Like, as a scientist, you look at all of this. What does this, like, what are your thoughts about this? And then we had a great old conversation, because I'm not going to share with everybody what you said. But you're welcome to, at any point through the conversation, say whatever you want about what your thoughts are about the industry. But the reason I raise that is because it leads us into what we want to talk about in this conversation, which is what is good science and bad science in the coffee industry. At the time that we were having that conversation, I was very confused. I had gone to MICE for one particular reason. I wanted to understand if people knew that a coffee crisis was coming. And that was 2021, I believe, or 2022. I think 2022.
Maybe 2022. I know. Was the first MICE after the COVID?
Yeah. So in 2022, I
so.
went there. I was living in Australia at the time, and I thought, I want to understand how many people here know that there's a crisis coming. And that was a lot of our conversation over a bowl of chips, I think it was. But that conversation really was, at the time, very validating to me, because at the time, you're in the industry, but you're not in the industry in the way that these people see themselves in the industry, right? They're in the cafes, they're brewing coffee and doing all of that kind of thing. You're in the industry from an industrial perspective, in the sense that perhaps more at a corporate level in the way that we look at things. And you have a different vision of the coffee industry than what these people are looking at it. And at that moment was when I started to realize there is so many layers to this industry that we're assessing this industry based on cup quality. Right? People want to separate out coffee as though it's commercial or it's specialty based on the quality in the cup. And that conversation was the genesis for me to say, I think that we're parsing out this industry in the wrong way. I think that instead of saying that commercial and specialty is based on the quality of the coffee, we need to look at it more from the approach of business. And in my opinion, too many people were sold the story that they should just focus on what quality is, and that's where they need to figure out where they sit in the coffee industry, and they're missing the bigger story that's going on here. Go ahead. I can see you want to say something.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting what you say, especially about the point of view of where the industry is, from the, that we work, to put it differently, we work with, many companies globally from the coffee industry. And you're right, I have more of a view of the kind of corporate level, what is going on, and from the commercial coffee, commodity grade, from companies that use commodity grade coffee, because if there is, I'd say 90% commercial coffee, 10% specialty globally. I don't know what the numbers are, but I just made those up.
Yeah.
Then our research is also 90% with commodity coffee and 10% with specialty, because kind of on average it's about the budget for research that there is in commodity and the budget there is in specialty related topics, right? Of course, we see this massively changing in recent years. But that's just a fact that it is. Right. However, I think that one thing that we need to go a step before this to discuss is really where the science come into coffee, because the ways how they're done differently, right? In the coffee industry. Now, perhaps you're now talking a bit from the point of view of the specialty coffee industry. Where you're talking about baristas and doing tasting and just looking for the quality, for the peak quality. But when I talk with people from R&D, from let's say from the top 5 world coffee companies, from one of those or a few of those, their concerns are different. Their concerns are how to keep consistent product quality, how to keep the costs down, how to make sure that they have a supply that works, that the product is always good, that the quality control doesn't come to the R&D and complain about what they're doing. And the last part, which is the most exciting of all, is how to innovate with new products to stay ahead of the competition. And this is where I think there's a lot of great science happening, because there, on this level of the coffee industry, we work with companies that really use the science. Pardon. They use the science for the innovation, for the product development, and they're really focused heavily on the data. So if they are innovating and they're testing something, they come to us to get support, and they come with a problem and they say, look, we have this and this is what we're doing, and we need data. We need to figure out what is happening here with coffee. How do we solve this problem? And they see that they need a scientific approach to this, a methodological approach. So in this case, you need to identify what your goal is, what you want to study. You need to identify which of the variables are we dealing with. So there's can be a lot of different variables that will impact coffee. Let's take some example to be more clear. Let's take some production line of coffee roasting and packaging into single serve. That's now a big industry, right? Mm-hmm. There's nothing to, it's clear, right? There's nothing to, nothing interesting to disclose there, because anybody from this industry knows this is a problem and everybody's dealing with it. Mm-hmm. Let's say you want to make a single serve capsule, mm-hmm. and you want to have a nice product that's extracting well and that tastes well. But your main concern is here not the taste. Your main concern is before that you need to figure out, before this getting to the quality of the taste, that actually this product extracts, it works. And there you can have problems already before this, for example, with the capsule pressure. Because as we know, coffee is degassing after grinding when it's freshly roasted, and it will release gas, and then the capsule is kind of inflating. And if you don't degas enough, then you will not. Then it will be too much pressure in the capsule, and the capsule in the end will physically not fit into the coffee machine, right? Into the capsule machine. So you're really dealing with a very fundamental problem that prevents you that the products work smoothly. And this is where R&D and science is really needed to systematically filter out which variables can be changed on the process level, which variables cannot be changed. And then the second thing is, if I change this variable, because let's say the problem is the capsule is too inflated, doesn't fit to the machine. If I change one variable, does this have then a consequence of like a chain events or other impacts further downstream until you get to the coffee beverage, that you will not get the coffee beverage as you want? Let's say,
shelf
for example,
stable, is that talking about quality over shelf stableness?
I'm not even talking about quality, I'm right. Talking really more about basics. I still don't want to go yet to the quality, okay. Because I just want to say how complex it is to really do really good solving a problem in a systematic way, how you can quickly get into problems, like on this capsule example. So for example, let's say now you have this capsule that doesn't fit, and you want to make it fit. So you change the parameter. Oh, I want to grind finer, because if you grind finer, you speed things up. The processes are faster, so then the gas release will be faster before the packaging, and then all will be good, right? But when you grind finer, what happens? So maybe the capsule fits, but then the coffee machine starts to extract and nothing comes out because
it's too fine.
Too fine, right? And then you have to look at other variables. So this is just one example that I want to show, is to see how in coffee you can take one variable and you think it will work, it will solve your problem, but actually it causes another problem. Because the things that we the variables that we work with coffee are so complex, they're so correlated between each other, and one impacts then another point, another thing, another process. And it's really challenging to do science in coffee, to first to identify the variables and then to figure out how they correlate, how one thing that you change correlates with other things. And this is where what we deal often with coffee science is that we find this a huge challenge. There's just some things in coffee which we cannot fully figure out because there's no way to detach one variable from another variable. They're always are correlated. One will impact another, and we cannot really fully have a picture of seeing how independent things impact our brew. In the end, we care about the brew, right? But all these processes before are so complex. There's so many things going on that it is a big challenge.
Do you think that's because we don't understand enough about coffee yet, or is it because it's purely the complexity of all of the variables that we're dealing with?
It's purely the complexity right now. Maybe there will be in the future new methodologies which will help us improve this to understand, but right now with the technologies that we have, with some things, it's purely the complexity of the coffee that is the issue. So then we have to figure out, how to do this in are the statistical methods where we can apply to studying coffee to try to figure out better how these variables correlate. Are there any tricks that we can do that maybe we try to design an experiment where we indirectly see the effects? So there's different approaches that we do in order to really systematically test things in coffee and to solve questions, to answer questions.
Now, when you contacted me and said that you wanted to have this conversation, you said to me, Lee, we need to talk about the difference between good science and bad science in coffee. What is the difference?
That's a lot of this.
Sorry?
Yeah. That's a very, very, how should I put it? It's a thing where you can go, let's say slippery slope to go from this complex situation to suddenly slide to test one variable a few times and then make a conclusion, right?
Which is the bad science.
About it. And that's where we are at the bad science, right?
Yeah.
That's where really the main difference is between, like I explained now on a very simple example of this capsule, but then the bad science would be just changing one thing and saying, okay, I've solved my problem. It doesn't I have the problem solved and we don't have to do anything anymore. So I've done the job. That's how it is. We go on, we sell this product, right? But in the end, there's many other questions that need to be asked. Are you using light roast coffee, dark roast coffee? It can behave completely differently, as an example. That's one study. Think of studies that were often in science, actually, even in like really good science. I see that within the scope of variables that you work with, maybe some conclusions are correct, but then you change the coffee, and they're not correct anymore. And the question is now: is this good science or bad science? Where does it fit? So there's not even this. I don't think there's a hard line, hard limit between good science and bad science, because there can be good science and bad interpretation of the good science.
But it's very clear when something is bad science. And I have to say, Samo, for the first time, I think I just realized why there's this tension point between me and a lot of people who call themselves quality in coffee, like a part of the quality part of the coffee industry. Because they keep telling me, but Lee, it's science, it's science, it's science. I'm like, it's not fucking science. What you're talking about is not fucking science. What you're talking about isn't the actual extent of what science is. You've been taught a couple of things and you think that that's the extent of what the testing and quality assessment is. I didn't, for the first time, you just helped me understand what I'm missing. To them, they believe that is science. Testing one or two variables in their mind is, or perhaps testing anything means science to them. But that's not what science is. Testing is the whole gambit of understanding the product development and how every single variable affects every other variable whenever you're doing some kind of product development. So I appreciate you giving me that insight because I wasn't seeing what I was missing.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah, testing is a tool that science uses, but you also need to interpret the results correctly. And this is where easy you can go, even in science, from good science to bad science, very quickly. Because there's this thing, also the correlation and causation. You can find things that correlate very well, and especially with using AI or similar methodologies for models, you can correlate anything.
Yeah.
You can find
Confirmation
always some
biases,
correlation. But
right?
is this true? Yes. But is it true that this is happening? Sometimes you need to go really on the fundamental level and not immediately find an answer. You have to think about it. You have an explanation, and you shouldn't just accept it as true. You have to test it. And this is where it's really the good science part. Is just going deeper and deeper into testing to try to figure out what is going on. What am I seeing? Not just do one test and then call it a day and say, okay, good, we figured it out. Now now the coffee is better quality. I mean, even what is better quality? How do you define quality? It's another thing of is this science or not? I mean, you can say, yeah, if consistency is part of quality, that's easily definable by science, right? You can measure the consistency very well with data, and you can show what is more consistent and what is less consistent. And then if you say, okay, what is the quality is what consumers like more. That's also, you can do this also in a scientific way. You can give coffees to people and you give them 2 coffees, and you give to
That's market research. That's not science.
Yeah, market. I'm not sure. It's market research. It is science. It is. I mean, in like life science,
in a social science kind of way.
This is. I don't want to offend somebody, but the word is soft science. that is used for this, but it is because you're using the scientific approach. You have your test. The test is a sensory test. Let's say it's 2 cups, asking people which one they prefer. You're using you have the experiment where you give this to people. You have the experiment conditions. You need to make sure you don't give it all. That you have the population of people that you give this to them. That is the correct, right? And then you have the data analysis. So you have the results. You analyze and you draw conclusions.
But this is where it goes to what
scientific.
Right. So the methodology. It's a scientific approach, but this is where when you say you can take that kind of scientific approach, but it's bad science when you use the interpretation of that. You can't turn around and say, there's an organization in coffee that says, cold brew grew by 40% in 2023. And when you look at the sample size, they're representative of all of America. They interviewed, or they had a discussion they did a survey with 1,400 people. And they said that 40% of coffee drinkers across the United States now drink cold brew compared to hot coffee. That's not
that's data misinterpretation.
Right,
you did not take
science.
The right population, right?
Right.
If it's like this, you can call it bad science in a way. Yeah.
And I think this is where I see what you're saying. It's like you can approach something with even a loose scientific approach, but the data interpretation is bad science. They go hand in hand.
I think in a very very concise way to distinguish good science from bad science. Maybe one way would be to say, in every good science, you understand the drawbacks of the methodology, and you are aware of this, and you don't hide them. in bad science, you just take conclusions and you just say this is true.
Right. And you can't be married to the outcome of your experiments. If you can't
No, you should you should be really, really open to other interpretations and other explanations. So many times, we had one project, I can't say the details, but I think 3 or 4 times we completely rethought about what is happening because we had like half a year of measurements and we thought we see something correctly in a correct way and explaining correctly. And then we saw in one of the experiments, with one experiment, we showed that what we were measuring in half a year doesn't make any sense. And if in this experiment this is reproducible, it just destroys everything what we did before. And then we thought, okay, we have to rethink this, we have to do a different experimental plan. And based on this result, we made another experimental plan. And after that, we still found within these conditions, again, something that again told us that what we did in the second half a year, let's say, again, we found something that again told us to rethink how we are explaining this phenomenon, this process in coffee. And this is, I think, how good science should work. You should find proofs of something. You do this by experiments, by testing of your hypothesis or something that you want to test. But then after you finish, you still have to be aware that are there ways to disprove my hypothesis?
1000%.
Because if one thing disproves your hypothesis fully and reproducibly every time, then if all other data was trying to confirm your hypothesis, then no, it's still not. Your hypothesis is false, right?
1000%. And folks, that's how I personally approach thinking about ideas. If ever I'm thinking about an idea for business, or if I'm thinking about solving a problem for a client, or about the way that I think about even just the SCA, right? And a lot of people have some opinions about my opinions about the SCA. I am constantly challenging those ideas with scientific method. I am constantly trying to disprove myself. I am constantly trying to make sure, is there another angle that I can see this from so that I could perhaps change my own mind? I am a trained scientist. I am taught to think this way by default. And if my science degree gave me anything, that's the gift that it gave me. Because if I can disprove myself, then I'm always holding myself accountable and I'm not married to my ideas. And essentially, that's what good science is, right, Samo?
Yes, that's what good science is. You have to be open to new ideas, and we are.
Yep, perfect.
But you shouldn't be open to too crazy ideas. But that's the topic of another discussion.
Another episode. Right? This episode has been a fantastic conversation. Join us for the rest of this series. And in the next episode, we're going to talk about the difference between innovation in the commercialized coffee industry versus specialty. So join us for that. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. This episode is part of a 5-part series produced by Mapper Forward. Check the full playlist and guest details in the show notes, as well as how you can support our work in the coffee industry. Become a premium YouTube subscriber, explore our Patreon and any brands we've partnered with to bring you this podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really does help us grow our audience.